dog mod thing. It actually looks kind of cool.
I actually like this camera angle way better on top of my TV.
Look at the image I sent you.
Yeah, look at my stream.
Just a minute. Dang, that's
What
really
the
cool.
hell? That is trippy.
Yeah, it looks like, what are those called? Like DNA body or something, and that they show in them shows. Or
Looks
movies.
like a really trippy version of water.
You know, right? Hey, Ender Dragon, I'm here. Let me see
Like
what
how
you look
good my
like.
camera angle is. You can nearly see.
The stupid Ender Dragon won't let me see what it looks like. Kablamo. No, show me what you look like, homie.
Alright, we are back with the. What?
The Ender Dragon. Jesus Christ, I just annihilated. Okay. Hi there, kids. It's your favorite teacher.
Flap, 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 flap.
You hear that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's the Ender Dragon. I'm making the Wither. I want to see what this dude looks like.
Oh no.
Holy crap. The Wither in this game mode, I don't want to know. The Ender Dragon looks creepy enough. They even added
Mom,
teeth
can we
to
please
it.
get Minecraft? Son, we have Minecraft at home. Minecraft at home. It's just Chinese Minecraft. Chinese bootleg Minecraft.
The Wither's fighting the Ender Dragon. Let's go.
Dude, I forgot about doing that. I remember that's one of my most favorite things to do, kind of. Just let the Ender Dragon and the Wither beef it out. In my opinion, I think the Wither would win, probably due to its regen.
So about something, if you have a good way to break it, if you break the little, you know how it's like a weird staircase, the end crystal is? If you try to break like the little part on the top, it breaks it, and then you'll just get like half a block piece. Kind of like a slab.
Yeah.
Bedrock slab.
Wait, yeah, so they're all like, they're pieces of bedrock, right?
Yeah.
Not slabs, but you know, general pieces of bedrock.
They call me Dream 2.0.
Okay, you wanna know my You wanna know what my most hated clash of colors is? Yellow and purple. They don't go together.
Why?
They just don't. They look old to me.
Old? Like, how do they look old?
Like medieval.
Where's the Wither? I want to test something right now. Now there's that crystal, right? Spawn a Wither near it. Shut up, manager, and I'll kill you like I did your parents. Oh no, the Wither's about to explode right near the end crystal. Its middle head is spinning like a helicopter.
Helicopter, helicopter.
Cool, I'm not surprised I destroy it. Is that Donnie Bob? Haha. I'm actually a pretty good Ender Pearl butcher. I totally don't mess up like 12 times already. My Wither guy just shot a freaking Wither skull like 12 feet out of distance. Ooh, I'm good at ender pearling glitching. No. I'll be right there.
No, I lost it! I was just about to sneeze and I lost it.
They call me the best ender pearl glitcher in the game. No wonder Mojang added me to his team. It's like, I'm so insanely good. Ah! No! This game's stupid as crap. I'm just watching the two withers destroy this. You know what?
Get up and walk the hell out. Like, go to bed. Stay out of class.
Whatever it is.
Why? You're thinking to yourself, why do I have to be the one loser that keeps everybody... Yeah, that guy's such a loser. No wonder that guy knows so much about being a loser. He knows it from experience.
Yeah.
I love roasting people. I hear a lot of professors are actually, like, egotistical or something.
Five withers, boys. Oh my god. The ender dragon is screwed. I had 3 more withers.
That looked weird on camera.
Like, I had 5 more withers. All I see is just the end getting obliterated by 10 withers. The ender dragon is dead. It's not even taking damage. Holy crap, there's so many particles of damage near the... Wait, what? No way. Somehow the withers broke obsidian? What?
Withers break obsidian.
Oh my god, that's probably one way to take down your pillars.
Shut
Even more withers. Don't worry about me, I'm just gonna make tons of withers.
When you identify as an M1A2 Abrams tank with a 155mm cannon. When I look on my camera, I realize how much I lean into my screen. No wonder I complain about dry, itchy eyes. Time for ache and burn.
Just gonna add another gang of withers.
I didn't say empty it, loser. Fill it up.
Adding like 6 more withers. Holy crap, holy crap. The ender dragon is screwed. Yo! I just just see so many explosions from all the withers that I spawned, and they're just obliterating the Ender Dragon. And they still haven't even hit him.
How are they obliterating them if they haven't even...
I meant like, when he, like he goes diving down. Oh my gosh. Oh, I know why they ain't taking damage, because
The cave exploring gone wrong. The sand cave disaster. Oh no. Oh boy. I think I already know where this is going. Sand cave. Minecraft.
my game is
Get out of here.
freaking low.
No. Wait, why am I fearing that? I can literally call it back.
What is it?
A train. I can literally call it back.
30th, 1925, Floyd Collins was crawling through Sand Cave in Mammoth Cave National Park, Kentucky, when a boulder fell onto his foot and trapped him 60 feet underground. Every attempt to free himself only brought more rock and dirt down on top of him, and he would spend the next 25 hours alone in the dark before rescuers finally arrived. This is his story.
I think I accidentally swallowed a dried up piece
As a kid,
of
Floyd Collins absolutely loved caves.
what's it
His
called?
family owned a log cabin just 4 miles away from the
Hey, I have a log cabin too.
At the age of just 6 years old,
was
he was already exploring Kentucky's caves all by
I think I
himself.
swallowed a piece
By
of
10 years old, he had dropped out of school and was scouring the local caves to find Native American relics to sell at the nearby Mammoth Hotel. By 12, he had memorized the entire
I killed myself.
in the nearby
That was such a small drop, though.
I'm just riding my boat in the end. I'm gonna help these wither boys out.
The established routes.
Yep, that's sedimentary rock. Those rocks aren't really that strong, if I'm not wrong.
Body of some of the explorers who had traversed the cave before him. In 1910, when Floyd was 14, a geologist from New York paid him to be guided around the cave system, and for the next 2 years,
Wow, what a kid! Can you imagine at being age 14, an adult, pays you to give him a tour around a cave? What a life to have right there. Like, dude, that's bragging rights. Yeah, I had a really good soccer goal. At age 14, an adult paid me to tour them around a cave. That's bragging rights right there.
Taught Floyd all about geology. What Floyd learned from the geologist later convinced him that all of the caves in the lower area were connected. As a teen, Floyd was known to be the best caver in all of Kentucky, and he would regularly squeeze through passageways that no other caver dared to touch.
Jeez,
In
all 10 of
1917,
these
Floyd
withers
discovered a
are about
massive
to
underground
explode with
canyon
the Ender
with sheer
Dragon.
vertical walls, a perfectly smooth ceiling, and large, colorful gypsum crystals. Convinced that this cave would make him and his family rich, Floyd named it Crystal Cave and began the road. Fortunately, due to its remote location and how bad the road to get to it was, Crystal Cave fell flat. Floyd even bought a taxi to try to bring more traffic into the area, but unfortunately, he was a comically bad driver. Apparently, so bad that he literally once hit the broadside of a bar. In addition to it being hard to get to, greedy nearby cave owners tried to discourage tourists from going to Crystal Cave by telling them it was closed and blocking the road to it with boulders and wagons. In fact,
What a
one
douche.
time, Floyd was even jumped by a group of 5 men who tried to get him to sign away the ownership of the cave to them. By late 1924, Floyd was determined to discover a cave that would beat the competition and make him and his family rich. Floyd knew of another potential cave known as Sand Cave that had a perfect location right beside Cave Road City. And this would mean that anyone traveling to the other popular caves would have to pass Sand Cave on the way. And so Floyd began working on a passageway in Sand Cave and would spend up to 12 hours a day clearing gravel, sandstone, and limestone in order to make
12 hours a day, what a dedication.
for people to enter. On the morning of January 30th, 1925, Floyd took off his coat and hung it on a nearby boulder. He then grabbed his kerosene lamp and rope and then dropped into a manhole-sized cavity in the ground, as he had done every day for the past few weeks. In the hole, he dropped to his hands and knees and began crawling through puddles and mud until the last beams of sunlight faded behind him. As he corkscrewed downward in the tunnels, he reached a 4-foot drop and lowered himself and his lamp down gently before proceeding onward. Up ahead, the passageway narrowed even further into just a small shaft of jagged loose rocks. At this point, he had to drop on his stomach and army crawl his way through. At 50 feet in, he reached the cave's first real squeeze, which was just a crack with 10...
God, you know what really gives me anxiety? Is when someone's caving and you hear that they have to crawl into a squeeze. That gives me damn anxiety, because there's this thing called Nutty Putty Caves. This guy got stuck upside down, which is one of the worst positions because the blood rushes to your brain, and it can kill you pretty easily. The guy literally they couldn't get him out, and he died, and they had to concrete that cave, sealing his body inside. Yeah, that's one of the most awful ways to go, is to get stuck in a cave and starve to death. Probably a fate maybe next to burning alive. I know, because I've heard that burning alive is one of the most awful ways to die. Like, one of the most painful, awful ways to go. Oof. I hate cave squeezes. They give me anxiety.
Exhaled all of his air to flatten his chest and then rocked his body forward and pushed with his toes to squeeze himself through the opening. On the other side, it widened up briefly before squeezing back down again to an even tighter squeeze. This time, the passageway descended down like a pit and was so tight around that it was like squeezing through a chimney that fit your body perfectly, except it was lined with rocks that dug into you and would tear your clothing as you moved through it. Floyd had spent the previous day removing rocks from this passageway, and it finally looked large enough for him to continue deeper into the cave. As he moved through the final crack, his kerosene lamp lit up a large 60-foot drop almost straight down. This is exactly what Floyd had been looking for, and he was eager to keep going, but his lantern began to die. So instead, he decided to head back for the day and refuel. So, he squeezes himself back into the crack, pushes his lantern out in front of him, and begins snaking his way back towards the chimney passage. Accidentally, Floyd knocked over his lantern, and so now he was suddenly in pitch black darkness.
Oh shit.
And this wasn't really Floyd's first rodeo, and so not panicking, he just continued onward back out of the cave. At one point, he dug his foot against what he thought was the cave wall to push himself forward, and began to lunge, but it was actually a rock formation, and when he pushed it, it broke. When it broke, a large rock landed on his ankle and sent shooting pain through his leg. Instinctively, he immediately tried to pick the rock off with his other foot, only to have a torrent of blood.
Dude, that would scare the ever-living hell out of me. Having a lantern in the mine and you drop it, it goes falling down. Yeah, pitch dark is pretty scary, but it's more scary when you're in a cave because you're in an area. Here's the thing. When you go in a cave without telling someone, you're not gonna get help when you get stuck. Because here's the thing, I don't know if you know this, but rock is really bad at carrying internet reception. So when you're stuck in a cave and you did not call anybody, it's over. It's done. Only luck will save you. You have 8 days before you.
Large rock on his ankle, he wedged himself deeper into where it was stuck. He heaved himself forward.
8 days before you start getting thirsty and you die of dehydration.
He tried to breathe and keep calm in the pitch black, but his left arm was pinned under his torso and his right was pinned by the ceiling above him. His head was also directly under the pit he had crawled from, and the cave squeezed him like a straitjacket. He couldn't reach behind him or roll over, and whenever he struggled, more rocks landed around him or onto him, and the jagged rock dug into
Oh, damn it. I'm an idiot.
I'm trying to choose a new account photo, and I see Sierra and this guy. Who is that?
Who? Oh, that's Kyle. Kyle's a literal, Giga Chad. He's awesome.
No, I don't know if it's Kyle or not. I don't even know. It's this guy. He has a kind of like a bowl cut, but not almost a bowl cut. It was okay. So Sierra was in a blue dress, and this guy had some yellow flower in his pocket of his shirt.
I don't know.
Looks like the guy that stalked you. No. Oh my god! Oh yeah, I remember now. This place. Where's this place? I never gotta go into it. Oh my god, is that me? Have you ever heard of Hadley? Have I ever told you this girl named Hadley?
No.
Yeah. Bryce told me to kiss her one time. Literally, kiss her. Well, it's or he kept saying we were boyfriend and girl. Bryce, it was like when I was 5 or 6. And one of the images was at her birthday, and she was laying on my arm. Like, I'm looking at old images. Kindergarten. The year I was always bullied by Bryce.
After fighting
The year
for
I
hours,
kissed a
he
girl.
asleep. When he woke up, realizing he
I hate
so
cave
bad,
squeezes
he screamed
so
for
damn
help.
much with a
For 25
passion.
hours, he spent his time either sleeping or
You like
screaming out
looking
for
at
help
images of
until he
when you were
lost his
younger?
voice. And it would take the full 25 hours for it to be noticed that he was gone, because this was typical of Floyd. In fact,
25
earlier that week,
hours?
he spent almost 30 hours straight in a cave. On top of this being a regular occurrence, he had been sleeping at 3 different homes in the last little while, and so it was assumed by each of his hosts that he was
If we
sleeping
do go
elsewhere.
visit
It
Florida,
wasn't
I'm
until the
gonna try
following
to
morning
bring
that
my
locals realized he might have gotten
PS4.
stuck somewhere.
Because
The first
apparently we're
person to
gonna
enter the cave to
go.
find him was 17-year-old Jewel Estes. He was thin, which was perfect for caving, but he was relatively inexperienced underground, and so he
I
had
can't
to
imagine,
reach
like,
Floyd.
nothing against,
Shortly before the
I'm
last
not
week,
trying to be, like, mean against fat people. I'm not, and I don't want to. But I cannot imagine caving when you have weight or a belly. That's gotta suck. Because that is a bad way to die. To get stuck. Even for people that are skinny, it sucks. Squeezes in caves are the death of many cavers.
No, me, I went caving and I almost got lost there.
No, like
No, I'm just kidding.
caving.
Yeah, no.
Like squeezes. When I'm saying squeeze, I'm telling them like, you know what clearance is, right? Like the clearance is like the distance from when you're putting like when something's in a space, it's how far it is away from the walls. When the clearance between you and the cave wall is less than an inch. And as said in the video, the rocks scrape and tear away at your clothes.
Yeah. I'm just looking at images.
he froze and had
I
to turn
really
back,
love it
but not
when
before managing to get close enough to call Floyd's name and received a yell back from Floyd. After exiting the cave and informing the others, one by one, men from the local area tried to reach Floyd, but each returned, soaked in mud and swearing to never enter the awful cave again. Most of the caves in Kentucky are solid limestone and are perfectly safe. In contrast, Sand Cave is composed of sandstone and limestone blocks, packed with mud and dirt holding everything together. These loose formations are prone to crumbling and cave-ins and are not usually frequented even by experienced cavers. At around 4 p.m. that day, Floyd's brother Homer arrived from work
Dude.
to find the crowd now getting...
To come. I know I was gonna say.
Takes pictures of his legs, his feet, everything you can take pictures of.
Omegle?
You know what? Should I go on there?
No, absolutely not.
I went on there before and it wasn't the best experience
Yeah.
I've ever had.
outside of Sand Cave. He ignored them and made his way over to the cave and went inside, still in his street clothes. He eventually reached the 10-foot pit above his brother's head and had to remove all of his clothing to get any farther. This was when Homer realized they had a huge problem. If the rescuer trying to free Floyd came down head first, he would have to work upside down. If they came with feet first, they wouldn't be able to bend down to reach Floyd because of how narrow the passageway was. Even worse, Floyd's body blocked any of the rescuers from being able to reach the rock that was pinning his ankle.
Thank God he's not upside down.
This would take some time. Homer called to have coffee and sausages brought to the cave to give to his brother. He began trying to dig his brother out upside down.
Can't imagine what it'd feel like to get stuck upside down in the cave. That's a death sentence.
Hours later, Homer
Especially if no one's gonna help you, and if you're in a squeeze.
skin just dangling from his fingers. As he recuperated near the opening, dozens more men entered the cave, and no one would be able to get anywhere near him until around midnight when Homer
If you
re-entered
do
the
hear
cave.
that here, you
For about 8 hours, Homer hacked the blocks surrounding
Here's what you need to do. First of all, if I'm entering a cave, I'm going to take a T-post, if I could, nail it to the ground, or a post. Wait, hold on. And my camera has this little white light on top, if it's on. Anyway, the T-post. Here's what you do. You nail a post, and you tie a rope to it. Actually, if you do this, it can actually really help if you need to get away. Because then all you gotta do is, you know, even better if it's like a wire, and the wire is lightweight and hooked up to like a communication device. That way you can communicate to people if you get lost, stuck, need help, or are exploring. I watched a video last time when I was working on the factory about this guy. Luckily, there were sadly like $10,000 worth of camera and photographic equipment got destroyed, but he saved the SSD cards, which props to him.
I have a question. It's kind of off topic. What do you want for Christmas?
Right now, probably blue Nerf guns. I need 3 more red. Apollo and the Nerf Hypnos. Which Hypnos, I don't know if I'm right or not, but it's actually pretty rare right now. I've seen people. It's like it's sold out literally everywhere, and the most I've seen is $120 or $200 for them, and they sell for about $60, by the way.
You know what I want?
Or actually, no, $50. To finish my red collection, it'll take me 120, which is actually pretty good. My red collection is very, very close being done. Phantom Core, I need the Hades. I need 5 other guns. Yeah.
I either want an Oculus or a...
I actually thought about getting Oculus. I want a PC, that way I can get a way to get a CAD. I want CAD, but CAD's like $300 a year, and I don't really want to make my parents spend that much money.
Bro, you know the dumbest thing ever? We were going to Halloween one time, and I was in an Iron Man costume with his gauntlet thing, right? And these people didn't want to go down and physically give it candy to us because it was COVID. So they had this pipe thing, right? And they used a pipe thing to dispense candy down to our buckets.
Kind of ingenious, if you ask me.
Yeah, well, at least but then I had to re-put it in because it fell out. But whatever.
Yeah, I don't know if I would use that sentence structure there.
I just kind of want, you know, a...
Wonder where there's any black soil. I want black soil. I want to run it through a terrain analyzer. And maybe then I can...
No,
You know what I need to take to school with me? Pair of nail clippers. One of the worst things in my opinion about school is when you have nail clippers. Dude, I always have to ask my office assistant, hey, can I have nail clippers? Hey, can I have nail clippers? Hey, can I have nail clippers? And then, like, it got to a point where I go in the office and she looks at me and I'm like, you know what I'm about to ask for. She just rummages through her desk and gets the clippers for me. And I'm like, thank you.
I don't know what I would do on Oculus. I definitely would not get VR time. Not until I'm older.
Mark trying to free his chest.
But I would get...
Oh, also, let's also not forget to mention that when you're stuck in a squeeze in a cave, it restricts your chest movement. That way, it's harder for you to breathe.
Yeah. But I'll probably get
If you travel for work, you want the best rates on hotels. That's where Hotel Engine comes in.
And Floyd would even ask his brother why everyone was staying up there talking. He was unaware of the fact that his caving ability was not ordinary. He was 60 feet underground at the end of a 140-foot corkscrew tunnel. And although that was easy for him, literally not a single other person was able to reach him, other than his brother. Homer was disheartened by this, of course, because he had asked multiple people to go down and give supplies to his brother after his long night shift. But they would just go into the tunnel, stuff the items in a random offshoot, and then return and lie and say they had given it to him. On February 1st, the only person to reach Floyd once again was his brother Homer. He spent that night removing rocks as he did the night prior, and when he finally emerged, he was greeted by reporter William tried to talk to Homer, but exhausted, Homer just gestured towards the entrance of the cave and exclaimed, "If you want information, the hole's over there. You can go in and find out."
You know what? That is a good question. What is, off topic from the video, what is the smallest unit of measurement? Because, have you ever heard of the coastline paradox? It's really simple, but it's really problematic if you're making a map.
Yeah.
The coastline paradox is a paradox so troubling that not even, if I'm not wrong, the FBI can't even clear it. Here's a problem. Let's say this coastline has roughly 100 miles of coast, right? But if you use another measuring tool, it could be, let's say, 1,000 miles. Do you know? You want to take a guess why this happens?
Why?
Because the thing is, at the coastline, they account for it straight. But the thing with coast is that they weave, turn, they make these weird shapes, right? And that could actually cause a coastline to be thousands of miles long. Like, if I take a line, if you take a straight line, right, it goes forever. Or
Yeah.
let's say if I have a screen, I'm going to have a line connecting from the corner of those screens, right? If I actually take the line from the corner, dangle it around a lot, and I put it to the other corner after doing so, that cord is extremely long. That line is extremely long. It doesn't look like it, but it's got more length onto it. Coastline paradox.
And William would actually take him up on the offer, desperately wanting to cover the story, and weighing just 117 pounds, William was actually able to reach Floyd. When he finally made it there, his heart was pounding, he was covered in mud, and he was exhausted from the squeezes. He then called out to Floyd, and Floyd gave a groan of recognition, and so William slid down into the pit, in the dark, only to land on Floyd's head. Floyd shouted out in pain, and so William quickly repositioned himself back up the pit. William then tried to talk to Floyd, but the whole ordeal was causing him to become incoherent at this point. And so he took some mental notes and then squeezed his way back out of the cave. On Monday, February 2nd,
how are they gonna get him out?
The name of Robert Burton, a 33-year-old Louisville firefighter. Like William, he was also able to reach Floyd. When he reached him, he took a look at the situation and told Floyd that he might be able to get him out with a rope, that the foot that was caught might come off in the attempt.
Oh shit!
And maybe a little bit delirious, Floyd just said, "Pull my foot off, but just get me out of here." What Robert didn't know is that Floyd had begun to lose touch with reality at this point, and so when he returned to the surface and told the crowd about the idea, there was a lot of pushback, and rightfully so. Pulling Floyd out of the cave would definitely break his foot, if not remove it entirely, and he might bleed out before reaching the surface. However,
yeah, that's actually a bad idea, because the thing is, fun fact, I know it's kind of weird to hear me say this, but the human body has like 1.5 gallons of blood. We have about 6 liters of blood around that. And yeah, it doesn't really end good when you lose too much of it. Also known as blood loss.
Remember how this Winnie the Pooh water dispenser thing where you put over the water drain thingy, dispenser thing that shoots out water? And it would be a Winnie the Pooh on a raft.
Keep going with the video.
At this point, Homer, William, and Robert descended into the cave with a special harness and a 100-foot rope. When they reached him, they gave him some whiskey and some sedatives to calm him down before the pull. They strapped him in and knotted the rope, and on Homer's count, the rope went tight. Floyd began screaming as his body was bent around the angle of the pit. His screams echoed through the cave as the men pulled, but Floyd didn't move. Fearing for his brother's life, Homer had had enough and began pulling the opposite direction, and actually managed to pull the rope from the other men. The screaming stopped, and Floyd lay limp on the cave floor. He hadn't moved a single inch. The team decided to leave the cave and reevaluate. Everyone was severely shaken by the experience, and Homer would even need to be carried out of the cave.
I just got this ad like 2 seconds ago. Stop spamming. This is embarrassing.
The reality of
I know what Riley is.
means you might be dealing with a lot of serious focused and video is
What a 50 pitch black pictures.
Outside of the cave, there was only one person left who stood a chance at rescuing Floyd, and this was his childhood friend, Johnny Gerald. When Johnny first heard about Floyd, He didn't think much of it because he knew that if anyone could get unstuck, it would be his friend, Floyd Collins. After 2 days and Floyd was still stuck, Johnny started getting worried and took a visit to Sand Cave. He reached the entrance to find that the crowd had grown to over 200 people, nearly all of which were drunk, and almost none had any cave. Disgusted by the spectacle that had come, Johnny pushed his way past and slipped through the cave. When he finally reached within earshot of Floyd, Floyd was ecstatic to hear his voice and for the first time in days felt some hope of being rescued. Johnny was a stocky man compared to the others and wasn't able to squeeze down the final descent into the pit. He first had to spend about 3 hours removing rocks in order to even get to Floyd. When he got down to him at around midnight, he started removing the gravel around Floyd's body. Another 6 hours later, Johnny had managed to enlarge the opening where Floyd was to uncover his torso, his hips, and his upper thighs. And for the first time since being trapped, Floyd was able to start to wiggle around. After finally being too exhausted to continue, Johnny would leave his friend in the cave with the promise to not let anyone else but his team into the cave. The men were worried that although they were well-intentioned, less experienced rescuers might cause a cave-in. The following evening, the game plan was to form a chain of men to pass food, equipment, and rocks up and down the
At least there's really good access to his mouth.
passageways.
Just got a problem if he has to take a poop.
Thanks to Johnny and Homer, the smallest of the group,
His ass is like practically like blocked by the rock.
When they got far enough, they would try to wedge a crowbar against the rock and then use a jack to lift the stone off of Floyd's foot. Unfortunately, there weren't any jacks that were the right size for the job, and so they went with one that was too small and then would use wood blocks against the cave ceiling to brace against the jack. Shortly before midnight, they began expanding the jack, but almost immediately it shifted to one side and slipped loose. William repositioned the jack and started opening once again, and the jack pressed into the board as the tension released and the rock began to tremble. Floyd cried out to keep turning as William focused intensely on the rock, and with each turn of the jack, he felt a surge of adrenaline as the stone continued to shift. When the block slipped
He survived, right?
place, William went on to try over and over, adding blocks, moving blocks.
This guy survived?
Adjusting the jack. All the while, Floyd was encouraging William, but unfortunately, at around 1 a.m., he collapsed from exhaustion. Before leaving that night, the men adjusted Floyd's blankets and wrapped a light bulb around his neck for warmth. They left the cave that night with purple and bruised hands, exhausted and defeated. The following day, another new face took charge of the rescue, a man named Henry Carmichael of the Kentucky Rock Asphalt Company. Given his line of work, he had the necessary experience to stabilize the supports in the cave and widen it more safely. He sent 2 men into Sand Cave to assess the structural stability, and they would have an easy time for the first 100 feet or so due to all the widening. But as they went further into the cave and the supports grew less frequent, they noticed something horrifying. The warmth outside of the cave due to all the fires and the warmth from the rescuers inside of the cave had caused the temperature and moisture level inside the cave to rise. Near the final squeeze, large cracks had formed and the ceiling was
I had a
beginning
Lego
to
birthday
droop.
party like in
One of the men
first
suggested
grade. It was
leaving
at the
immediately,
stadium
but
in
the
South Carolina, right? Out of all the things that could have gone wrong. We asked for chocolate cake. They gave us vanilla.
Okay.
other desperately wanted to reach Floyd. By the time
But
they
I didn't
reached
know
him
that.
and spoke to him, the other man was practically begging him to turn back. It looked as though the passageway was closing in by the second. 118 hours into the rescue, the men were confident they could use a blowtorch to burn away 2 of the rocks that had preventing the jack from being placed in the right position.
I mean, I know it's probably risky, but it is sandstone. Sandstone is an extremely light material. I'm not saying that because of Minecraft. I'm saying it because from personal experience, I had a sample of sandstone, and it was so damn soft that even on my way of taking it home, it started crumbling to dust. You can easily tear away. I think that piece of sandstone I had actually broke into 2 pieces at one point because it was so soft. You could easily destroy it. I wonder if there's a way to like mine around it. I mean, I know it's not like Minecraft, but like mine around.
Dozens of times in the last few days,
I have a
quickly
question.
came up with
Have you ever been in school plays?
The cave had collapsed.
No.
He tried to
Actually,
move
wait.
rocks,
I'm a dumbass. Yeah, I have.
more rocks to fall from the ceiling.
I have been
Rocks
in
were also
too,
falling all around
and
him
I don't want to
behind
be in
him,
any
almost
more.
I've been in.
Because
How many
they're
plays have you been in?
crazy. 2.
I've
think
been
one
in
in
like
second.
4.
1 in second, 1 in third. Bro, I forgot, was it the 3rd one? One of those plays, I had to literally go out myself and speak.
You wanna know what my second grade play role was? You're not gonna believe it. You're gonna laugh. A tree. I was a tree.
It sounds like Greg Heffley.
I'm
Oh, apparently.
I think I have a tear coming out my eye. I'm actually laughing. I mean, I'm the play wasn't bad. It was like this like little bear thing where these bears went on a picnic, and I was a fir tree. I was a indigenous fir tree. I remember
I
that.
don't know, something. Apparently, the actor of Greg Heffley, like the main one, got arrested or killed his own mother. Literally killed his mother.
God, I think that's called matricide.
Back around them, but he was now scared of also becoming trapped.
Because she didn't want to
Returned to
find
the
out
surface,
something about him.
nose bleeding, and told everyone that it was now too
Apparently this
dangerous
one
to enter Sand Cave. The last man from this team to enter the cave would be Johnny Gerald. Over the next 8 hours, he went into Sand Cave at least 5 times to reinforce the walls and to remove
I'm gonna
rocks.
go ask my mom if I
On one
can.
occasion, Floyd could
Can
hear
we
Johnny
build
get close to the
something
pit
there?
and ask for some food, but Johnny would tell Floyd about
So
the
I want
cave.
to do it before my dad.
When he heard the
That's what
terrible
I like
news,
to do.
Floyd began to cry. Motivated by the gut-wrenching sobbing of his trapped friend, Johnny continued to tirelessly remove rocks from the pile, and would actually finally manage to see light coming from the other side, coming from the bulb around Floyd's neck.
Oh,
At 10:30
God.
p.m. on February 4th, Johnny would enter Sand Cave for the final time. He squeezed through the tunnels and crawled through the mud with the hopes of coating Floyd's legs with Vaseline to slide him out. As he approached the cave-in, he was shocked to see that no light came through anywhere. The cave had collapsed once again.
Oh, my cat
He stared
Bella.
motionless at the pile
Yeah,
for over 15
the real
minutes
one.
and then began to yell. He called for Floyd over and over until a rock came down from the ceiling and landed on his head. He called out again, and then another heavier rock landed right on his back. 15 minutes later, Johnny left the cave and would not re-enter. On Tuesday, February 5th, 142 hours into the rescue, the state of Kentucky assumed control of the rescue. A team of engineers and miners were assembled outside of the cave with the goal of creating a shaft parallel to Floyd, which would then be used to dig horizontally once they got down deep enough.
Dude, okay, if it's one thing that kind of restores your faith in humanity, it's effing cave rescues. Like, these guys are literally proposing to dig a hole, which in real life, digging through any type of rock is hard. But digging through it to not kill someone, to save them, is actually harder. No pun intended. But damn, dedication. Like, this guy could be left. They could be like, oh, I'm too tired to rescue him. No, they're gonna probably try to save him.
To survey the ground,
What
trees were cut
effort,
down,
man.
rocks were removed, and equipment was brought in to dig. However, all of the machinery proved to be useless. Tests showed that the video was only filled the cave and killed Floyd before ever reaching him.
Snip.
At hour
And my teacher
146,
got on me,
men began
right?
digging the
Then I tell
55-foot
my teacher
shaft
that,
with
hey,
picks
this kid
and
did it.
shovels.
Well, I didn't see
Approximately
him do it,
75
so
volunteers worked to remove
he
soil
can't
with the
get
hope
trouble.
of dredging up 2 feet of
When you
soil
can
per hour.
literally see
If they worked at that
cut
pace,
of it.
Hmm.
reached Floyd
Like,
in about
he's
30
cut his
hours.
hand.
The first ton was removed easily, and the diggers were already down to 10 feet. At 15 feet, the shaft narrowed, and the shovels began to run into boulders. A system of buckets and pulleys worked to remove debris as fast as possible, but the pace slowed to just 6 inches per hour. At hour 30, when they initially expected to reach Floyd, the shaft was only 17 feet deep. Locals and men who had worked before the state got involved watched helplessly from the sidelines.
Can they, like, bring an excavator in and start digging?
Above the shaft to prevent rain from getting
Like, digging the shaft? Or maybe like a corkscrew?
at the bottom of the shaft. Towards the end of Sunday, the shaft reached a depth
Maybe
of
that
25
corkscrew, I don't
feet, and the pace of digging slowed to only 4 inches an hour. At this pace, Monday went by, and then Tuesday went by, and then on Wednesday, at hour 288, the rain turned into snow, and the water and mud began to freeze.
Oh,
At
shit.
hour 360, a depth of 55 feet was finally reached, and the order was given to burrow sideways into Sam's cave. At hour 411, after 17 days trapped underground, 12 without food or water, and 4 without any heat from the light bulb that had burned out, there was no hope left from the work. At 1:30 p.m. on Monday, February 16th, a chisel finally entered Sand Cave. Workers frantically removed rocks to widen the hole, and finally a rescuer named Ed Brenner flashed a light into Sand Cave. He looked into the cave and saw a glimmer. Floyd Collins had a gold tooth and it was
Well, I
shimmering
won't
in
leave.
the light,
Okay, never mind.
but
I
it did
won't
not
leave
move.
party, but I'm
He
gonna
turned around to look at the
mute
group
and turn
and
on
shook
my
his
mic
head
a
and
little
said,
bit.
Floyd Collins is dead.
Oh.
Brenner would later claim that Floyd had been dead for approximately 3 days.
Yeah,
If this
I
is
had a
accurate,
giant crypto.
Floyd
He
died
died.
a day after his light bulb finally went out.
That was
All reports
expected.
with the shaft walls buckling in,
Grace, I have this
officials
giant
decided
Capone
that it
thing,
was
or I
too
had
dangerous
one,
to
it's up
remove
to run
Floyd
on
from
right,
Sand Cave.
and my cat Bella, my real
For the
one,
next 8
and I
months,
put her
former
inside the
Collins toured
Capone
stations
thing.
across the country
She
telling
started
crowds stories.
meowing.
Yeah, that's
I'll
the
be right back.
second. That's the second time I've heard this. Is that they're too dangerous to pull him out.
Ever since his brother was declared dead,
Gonna mute
Homer had vowed to get him out,
and turn my
but didn't have
volume
enough
down.
money to fund an
Okay.
excavation. On April 17th, he had finally raised enough money, and 7 miners redug the shaft and re-entered Sand Cave. This time, they entered from in behind Floyd's body and finally removed the rock that pinned his leg and caused his death. It weighed just 27 pounds. And finally, on April 26, 1925, Floyd Collins was lowered into a grave in the family cemetery. A stalagmite headstone marks his plot. If you made it this far, I just wanted to thank you for watching. My name is Sean, and this is my channel, Scary Interesting. I really hope you enjoyed the video, and if this is the type of content that you enjoyed, I hope you'll consider subscribing to my channel. I'm hoping to make 1 or 2 videos a week, just like this one, that will be covering these scary and interesting
Oh,
stories.
I'm gonna rewatch a video about this. I didn't watch this video. Nutty Putty Cave.
For 6 years on
Oh, this is awful.
until the end of the year. Click the link or visit Ashley.com for better sleep and savings. Ashley.
This is awful.
Being stuck in that position for going on 23 hours now makes it very difficult for him.
On the 24th of November, 2009, John Jones, a 26-year-old medical student and devout family man, was back home in Utah with his pregnant wife and their young daughter for the holidays. During the stay, he and a group of 10 other friends and family members arranged a trip down to the Nutty Putty cave system. This was a supposed beginner's cave, located near the family's home in Salt Lake City. But the trip
Wait, what?
would quickly
It was a
turn.
what? Beginner?
Members arranged a trip down to the Nutty Putty cave system. This was a supposed beginner's cave.
A beginner's cave? Are you serious? There's a thing called the birth canal, where it squeezes so damn hard that there's barely any inches of clearance between you and the cave wall.
History leading to the Nutty Putty caves being sealed shut forever. This is the story of the Nutty Putty cave incident. Be warned, this is not a story for those with claustrophobia.
It really
Nutty
isn't.
Putty caves, first explored in 1960, were notorious for their narrow and slippery passageways, twists and turns. The cave system is accessible by a narrow hole, just 30 inches wide, and was reported to be an extremely popular beginner's cave, welcoming anywhere from 5 to 25,000 visitors a year. But after a series of high-profile rescue missions between 1999 and 2004, the cave's safety was widely and publicly called into question. All of these incidents involved people becoming stuck in the smaller passageways of the cave, including a 23-year-old man who became stuck for more than 7 hours, just meters away from the place where John Jones would find himself trapped. In another incident, a local teenager became stuck upside down for an entire night before he could be rescued. Because of these high-profile incidents,
Right, I have
on
to
May
go play outside for a
2006,
little bit.
the Nutty
Aye.
Putty cave entrance was gated and inaccessible, and for several years, local cavers, or spelunkers as they're known in the US, would battle local authorities who were threatening to close the cave for good. Officials stated that the caving system was a ticking time bomb, and that it was only a matter of time before something
I hate to agree with the government, but they're right. It was a ticking time bomb.
Shutting the cave down would be unfair to serious cavers, and that people should take more responsibility for their own safety. It's apparent from the comments and letters written into local papers that some people felt extremely passionate, even indignant, about its potential closure. One letter to Utah's oldest newspaper demonstrates this, reading, "I'm tired of the government deciding it knows what is best for us. Nutty Putty Cave has been a fun spot for me. Both of my sons now love going to that cave. I hope somebody can tell me how many people have been hurt or killed. I haven't heard of any. Possibly a sign telling of the risks involved should be placed by the cave, so that we as Americans can decide for ourselves what is best." As the war waged on, finally, in September 2007, the caves were officially closed to the public, while a new volunteer management team was put in place. This was a last-ditch attempt to prevent the cave's complete and permanent closure. And then, finally, in March 2009, the Nutty Putty Caves reopened, with a brand new cave management plan. The new plan enforced a process which required would-be spelunkers to apply for a permit 21 days before their visit, and agree to follow certain safeguarding procedures, such as having a minimum of 2 people per visiting group that were, and I quote, experienced cavers. And so, it was under these circumstances that 26-year-old John Jones and his then 23-year-old brother Josh Jones, plus 9 other members of his friends and family, entered the Nutty Putty Caves on the 24th of November 2009. When the group entered the cave at 8 p.m. local time, they would have been confident. Whilst John and his brother had not visited the Nutty Putty Caves before, they had spent much of their childhood exploring Utah's caves. In fact, as a small boy, John had more than once acted as a trapped victim for the Utah Cave Rescue Team, a group his father had helped found. But the reality was that John and his brother hadn't been spelunking in years, and there is a great deal of debate as to whether John and his brother could act as experienced cavers on behalf of their group. Nonetheless, for the first hour, everything went well, as the party explored the largest room in the cave, called the Big Slide. It was at this point that his brother Josh and their 2 friends challenged each other to go further on into the next part of the cave, taking on one of the most difficult to navigate areas, known as the birth canal. This part of the cave is so tight that only a few people can actually access it. Eventually, the birth canal passageway opens up into a small room. Several people had become stuck in the birth canal previously, but John, a fit, healthy, and slender man in his prime, wasn't worried. Heading through the passageway first, with his brother behind him, John wriggled on just his stomach down what he thought was the entrance to the birth canal. But John, unknowingly, had taken a wrong turn down an unmapped passageway via a route known as the Corkscrew, a place where only the smallest and most flexible of cave explorers could fit. As John pushed forward, the passageway became tighter and tighter, and he became unable to turn back on himself. When he saw what looked like a small opening at the end of the crawl space, he continued on, with hopes of being able to turn around. Unfortunately, this is where things took a turn for the worse, because John was crawling head first into a 10 by 18 inch fissure that dropped straight down. Worse still, John had sucked in his chest to slide past a lip of rock.
Oh shit, I know this is going.
When his chest expanded again, he became
He's stuck
in an area the size of a small, front-loading washing machine. John made several attempts to free himself. It was no use. It was at this point that he began calling for his brother. When Josh finally found John, for a split second, he thought that this would be a silly story to tell later on that evening. But, as he examined the situation more closely, dread settled in. Josh made several desperate attempts to free his brother, but none of them worked. In fact, he had made the situation worse. John had slid further down into the passage, and was now completely upside down, with both of his arms.
That would suck.
Unable to move at
I
all.
think I'd rather burn to death, because if I burnt to death, I'd die faster. Then you're starving in the blood. Oh god, that's a bad way to go. I can't tell what's worse, being eaten alive, dying in a cave. If I die in a cave, I'd probably rather be impaled and instantly killed by like a stalagmite.
At 12:30.
Try our Italian favorite at Firehouse Subs.
At 8 a.m., the first rescuer arrived on the scene. It was Susie Matola, a local volunteer who immediately rushed to the scene when she received a message on her pager. Right away, Susie realized that John's predicament was much, much worse than she had thought. She knew she had to keep John calm, and so she greeted him and told him that he'd be out in no time, and not to worry, to which John replied, "Hi Susie, thank you for coming, but I really, really want to get out." Susie tried absolutely everything she could think of to pull John out, including cutting off part of his jeans to free up some space. But after 2 hours, Susie was exhausted and
Real large
She
system.
was forced to crawl back up to the surface where, at this point, both his wife and his daughter and around 30 rescuers had arrived on the scene. There, a very concerned but calm group were brainstorming plan after plan. They discussed everything, from breaking John's legs to lubricating the walls with several gallons of oil. But eventually, they decided upon a system of ropes and pulleys to hoist John out, legs first. This pulley system would be aided by drilling some of the rock around him to create more space. Members of the rescue team made their way to John with the equipment, but they ran into problems. The rock wasn't coming away quickly enough, and removing what did come away from the wall was proving impossible to do safely, not least of which because the rock was falling back down onto John. Back at the surface, the rescue team, now in their hundreds, were all becoming increasingly concerned. Things were moving slowly. Each trip to pass a piece of gear to John's location, 700 feet deep within, and only one person could ascend or descend down the passageway at a time. To make matters worse, when rescuers told on-site trauma surgeon Doug Murdoch that John was upside down, Doug made the team aware that this likely meant that John would only have 10 hours before his organs would fail. The human body is designed to be upright. The heart works with the force of gravity, and if it can't, blood and fluids quickly begin to pool in the brain and lungs,
and that's bad.
eventually it becomes extremely difficult to breathe. On top of this, the heart begins to work overtime, and it becomes increasingly difficult to pump blood around the body, which can lead to cardiac arrest. This was something Susie noticed within the first hour of working to free John, a distinct rattling noise coming from his chest, a clear sign that fluid was pooling in John's lungs. He was already starting to asphyxiate. The rescue team decided that the immediate goal should be to get John out of his dangerous position to alleviate the pressure on his lungs. The team got to work immediately to install the first system of ropes and pulleys, but they quickly ran into several problems. John's legs and feet couldn't bend back around the curve of the
Is it growing? Oh no, it's going south. Dad's like, oh, there's a supercell approaching. I'm like, that's not a supercell. Supercells. I've already seen them. They are usually like, you know, like a bathtub. Kind of like, imagine this is your cloud, right? A supercell would look kind of like this. How it'd have a bowl shape appearance. Wide, but a little bit less curved. Like probably it'd be like that. It looks like this if you're viewing it from above. Like if it looks like a bowl on the bottom. If it does form that, and if it is a mesocyclone, you do not want to be outside. Mesocyclones are the birthplace of tornadoes. Oh wait, it's...
That is up 18 hours. A team of 8 were ready to pull, but there was a problem. Each pull was agonizing for John, and the team had to pause several times to avoid breaking his legs. And then, a glimmer of hope. On the third pull, John was lifted up high enough to make eye contact with his rescuer, who later commented that his eyes were red, his face was dirty, but that he seemed fine otherwise. When the rescuer asked him how he was, John said, "It sucks. I'm upside down. I can't believe I'm upside down. My legs are killing me." The rescuer saw that even though John was complaining, he had a smile on his face. And then, on what was to be the fourth pull, disaster struck.
Oh, he fell back in, didn't he?
It was helping to hold him in position. One of the devices as part of that system failed, and Mr. Jones actually ended up falling back into the area where he had been stuck for so long.
The system had failed. The entire team fell backwards. When the team regained composure, they realized that the worst thing imaginable had happened. A bolt that was drilled into one of the cave's walls had come out, causing part of the cave to crumble. This had hit the lead rescuer in the face, causing him to momentarily black out. And, worst of all, John had slid back down into the crevice and had now become completely unresponsive. With the rescuer closest to John now needing medical
I would just say, you know what? Please just shoot me. Or administer like a lethal injection.
Still breathing, in a
I would
state of
not want to live.
the new rescuer somehow managed to slip a rope around John's waist, but he himself became stuck and needed help from other members of the team, sustaining multiple injuries in the process. A third lead rescuer made a last-ditch attempt to free John by desperately drilling away the rock around him, but it was no use. The entire team was exhausted. John was barely breathing and was still unresponsive. He had gone into cardiac arrest, and tragically, there was nothing anyone could do. It was at this point that John's wife Emily was informed of the situation. John was technically alive, but unconscious. In her desperation, she believed that he could still survive the ordeal and continue to radio down. In one of her final communications with John, she said, "I know you've been pushing so hard for so long. Why don't you rest for a minute and take a break, and then you can push again?" At this point, whilst they couldn't officially confirm it, rescuers suspected the worst. And so, a brave paramedic was sent down to take a pulse, confirming what everyone had suspected. At 11:56 p.m. on the 25th of November 2009, John Edward Jones was pronounced dead 28 hours after he had initially become stuck. Emily was initially in complete disbelief. She refused to believe that her husband could die from such a simple mistake and did not accept that a pulse taken from the leg could indicate that he was dead. Eventually, officials managed to calm her down, agreeing that they would do everything in their power to remove her husband's body from the cave.
They didn't.
Not wanting to let a grieving widow down, the team discussed what was reported to be some rather distasteful plans to get John's body out, but this would prove to be impossible. Even if they were able to free John, his lifeless body would not be able to twist properly in order to be fully removed from the cave, at least not intact. It was decided, given everything that had transpired, that it was simply too dangerous for the rescue team to attempt to remove his body.
Yep,
And
there
so,
it is.
a decision was made to seal the entrance of the cave
With concrete.
with John's body inside.
With a plaque.
However, John's family had a plaque installed at the entrance of the cave in his memory. Later, the family would release a statement where they said that John Edward Jones, husband, father, and pediatric cardiologist in training, would be remembered for his, quote, "good nature, delightful sense of humour, strong work ethic, a genuine love of people, a masterful ability to relate to children, a love of and unwavering faith in the gospel of Jesus Christ, and his commitment to his family as an amazing husband, father, son, and brother." To this day, John's remains are still inside the cave, serving as a harrowing reminder of the very real risks of cave exploration. This is the Real Horror Channel, the place for all things really horrifying. If you enjoyed this video, please consider liking and subscribing. and I'll be back with more real horror soon.
These clouds create the purest rain on Earth. It falls on a remote tropical island in search of nature's best filter, ancient volcanic rock. It's not just water, it's Fiji water.
When you have auto glass damage, trust SafeLight. And one easy appointment, we can replace your windshield and recalibrate your advanced safety system. Great, thanks. Stay safe with SafeLight. Schedule now.
SafeLight repair, SafeLight replace.
5 Finnish men were exploring the famous Pluragrada Cave.
The Plura Cave is. Okay, now I'm gonna.
Wrong. This is their story. On February 5th, 2014, Kai, Patrick, Vesa, Jari H, and Jari U departed from Finland and made the 15-hour drive through Finland, Sweden, and Norway to reach the famous Plura Cave. In Finland, most divers practice on the Ojamo Quarry because there are very few natural caves that are suitable for diving in Finland. For this trip, they wanted to undertake something more challenging, and so they chose the Plura Cave because it's the largest water-filled natural cave in all of Northern Europe. For their drive, they took Jari H's van and pulled a trailer full of gear, including a snowmobile, underwater scooters, a few dozen large oxygen tanks, and various other smaller pieces of equipment. The reason they brought oxygen tanks is that the Plura Cave is an underwater cave system, and the 5 men were actually cave divers. The 5 of them
Cave divers.
were actually not all that
What a
well.
hell of a
This trip had
job.
originally been planned by Kai for January, but a number of other divers had prior commitments, and so ultimately, these men were together by sheer coincidence. With that being said, some of them had dived together previously because although technical diving is quite popular in Finland, the cave diving community as a whole has stayed small because of the risks associated. For those of you unaware, cave diving is a dangerous hobby. In fact, so dangerous that the year prior, Kai had actually lost a longtime diving partner in an accident at the Montola Quarry in central Finland. At some point during that trip, Kai noticed that his partner was missing his mouthpiece and pulled him up onto the ice and began resuscitation. Unfortunately, it was already too late. He had already died by the time rescuers arrived. Despite knowing the risks of diving, Kai was sufficiently traumatized by the death of his friend that he swore off diving for good. This hiatus didn't last long, however, because most of his friends were still diving, and so he was unable to give it up and returned after a couple of months. Later that year, Kai would witness another fatal accident when a group of 12 Finnish divers had only just begun their descent towards a shipwreck off the coast of Tallinn when one of the divers disappeared. The body was ultimately recovered hours later at a depth of 70 meters, and the individual was deceased. On this expedition, Patrick and Kai were the most experienced divers of the group, and it was them who had discovered the connection between the 2 known entrances to the Plura Cave. They, alongside another diver, were the first to dive from one entrance to the other, thus conducting a so-called traverse, which is a great accomplishment in the cave diving community. The goal of this expedition was to perform just the second ever traverse of the Plura Cave, and this time, it would be the first to be completed in the opposite direction. The fact that the cave reaches a depth of over 130 meters makes the dive extremely challenging, while several tight squeezes and freezing...
Wait, hold on. You can only dive down like 40 meters. Or 150 feet. Are they seriously gonna go triple that? No wonder people don't dive in this cave. It's below max depth limit.
The cave through an entrance located in a pond and dive 2,000 meters across to the other entrance, which is a dry cave roughly 100 meters below the surface of the earth. They would then leave their equipment in this dry cave, stay the night at a nearby farm, and then return in the morning and dive back once more. The dive ahead was so difficult that perhaps no more than a dozen Finnish cave divers would have dared to undertake it. The night before the dive, except for Jari H, they all had a single beer before heading to bed and agreed not to get up until 8 a.m. to ensure they were well rested for the difficult challenge ahead of them. On February 6th at 8 a.m., they woke to slightly below freezing temperatures just before sunrise. Jari U cooked everyone breakfast while Patrick went down to the pond to examine the condition of the ice. After breakfast, the group split into 2. 3 of the men went to bring equipment to the dry cave where they would finish their dive, and the remaining 2 men headed down to the pond to cut a hole in the ice with a chainsaw. The ice that morning was almost a foot thick, and the blade of the chainsaw was just barely long enough to make it through the hilt. But once they managed to cut a large enough hole in the ice, it revealed the spectacularly clear, 5-foot deep water and rocky bottom of the pond. Jari H and Patrick then put on their dry suits and began loading equipment into the pond. As the other 3 men arrived from the dry cave, Jerry H. and Patrick slipped under the freezing water. Below the ice, they proceeded away from the hole in the pond and towards the opening of Plura Cave, using their underwater scooters to conserve energy.
I've used one of those. Those are fun, but they wear your arms out.
Prior to the other three, to ensure that the sediment would be cleared by the time the second group got into the water. The dives of each group would last approximately 12 hours total. Now, to understand exactly what occurred on their dive, you've got to understand some of the specifics of technical diving. Technical diving is when divers descend to beyond 40 meters in depth and requires special training because instead of using high-pressure air, divers breathe a mixture of oxygen, nitrogen, and helium, and these ratios are then tweaked according to the depth of the dive performed. In addition to this mixture of gases, the men dived with closed-circuit equipment, otherwise known as rebreathers, instead of open-circuit equipment. The difference between open-circuit and closed-circuit is that with closed-circuit, the rebreather does not discharge the air exhaled. Instead, the carbon dioxide we breathe out is recycled and mixed with oxygen to be breathed again. The main benefits of this system are that divers need fewer gas cylinders so they can fit through smaller openings and they can stay submerged for notably longer than with open-circuit systems.
I have one complaint. I think the biggest thing, I wish on every one of these they had a switch. That way you could just shut off power, because that'd shut off the power over to that thing.
There are a few disadvantages to the system, however. The rebreather itself is attached to a dive computer on the wrist of the diver, and this system is significantly more costly than an open-circuit system. They also come with greater risk, because if the mixture of gases supplied by the rebreather is off, the diver might have too much or too little oxygen. As an additional safety measure, the men carried a reserve gas system that included an additional rebreather with open-circuit gas cylinders in case of a failure of their primary equipment. As Jari and Patrick made their way to the entrance, the taper faded behind them. Slowly, they made their way into the pitch black, freezing cave. Their flashlights revealed sharp rocks in front of them and the chunks of limestone that lined the floor of the cave beneath them. They had to be extra careful not to scrape the walls, because even a small tear in their dry suits in the freezing water at this depth would almost certainly be fatal. The cave descends gradually to a depth of 34 meters over the first 500 meters, before ascending briefly to a 200-meter-long chamber that is only partially filled with water. After the air chamber, the cave descends steeply to 6 meters, then 100 meters, and then to a final depth of 130 meters.
Woo.
In addition to the sheer depth of the cave, the passageways are sometimes only narrow openings that divers have to squeeze through or pull themselves through slowly with their hands. As Jari and Patrick reached the deepest section of the cave, they turned off their scooters to admire the cave and to check out the official marking that indicated they were at the deepest point in the entire cave. At this point in their dive, they had traveled over a kilometer from the entrance and were getting close to the dry cave on the other side. From the deepest point, the passageway begins to ascend, and at one point there's a sharp 90-degree turn that's fairly narrow, but definitely not the narrowest section of the route. Patrick went first, but noticed that once he made it through, Jari's light was nowhere to be seen. He turned around to wait, but saw off in the distance that Jari was waving his light up and down. This is the sign divers use to indicate distress. Now, when you're underwater, you can talk, but it's difficult to articulate the words because of your mouthpiece. Certain things are easy to say, and certain things are very difficult. However, Patrick could hear Jari yelling for help loudly and clearly, so Patrick began to make his way over, so now the two were face to face in the narrow passageway. Jari was yelling for him to detach one of his large bailout cylinders that was apparently in the way. Patrick tried to move it, but it was difficult to detach, and it was also blocked by his own scooter. So first he had to move the scooter, then he went back to move the bailout scooter, and about a few seconds into his own, Jari was frantically yelling at him to come back. Patrick shouted back that he wouldn't be gone for a second and to just calm down. He was kind of confused as to why Jari...
Can we also have, like, large batteries?
Because it wasn't super obvious from the angle he was at what he was stuck on. And he was also just kind of confused by Jari's reaction. He hadn't yet realized how distressed Jari already was at that point. He briefly thought about just yanking Jari out of the spot that he was in, but he didn't want Jari to panic. Finally, he noticed that the line of his scooter was stuck under a big rock. Little did he know, Jari was already way more panicked than he had realized. Studies indicate that typically there is no single reason for diving accidents. Generally, first, there's something called a trigger incident, where the diver runs out of gas briefly or gets stuck. Then if the diver fails to manage that situation and panics, the situation can escalate very...
Oh, I thought that was the battery. I'm about to say, like, wow, if that's...
Two common emergencies that divers might run into are hypercapnia and oxygen intoxication. Oxygen intoxication occurs when a diver inhales too much oxygen, whereas hypercapnia is when too much carbon dioxide is inhaled. These are often...
Yes, that is true. You can actually suffer from too much oxygen.
Is when a diver panics and is no longer able to breathe regularly.
In fact, oxygen, if we inhale pure oxygen, Not wrong. We actually can get harmed from it.
These are often the result of some failure of the rebreather. Other way that hypercapnia can occur is when a diver panics and is no longer able to breathe regularly. To prepare for these circumstances, divers will practice switching from their rebreather to an open-circuit bailout cylinder in an attempt to reduce the concentration of carbon dioxide in their blood and to calm down. Hypercapnia and oxygen intoxication can also occur without warning, and the diver may not notice anything is out of the ordinary until suddenly they start losing consciousness, at which point their mouthpiece will fall out of their mouth, they'll inhale water, and they'll drown. In addition to all of that, divers experience something called nitrogen narcosis at depths of 30 to 40.
Is that like where nitrogen gets into your bubbles?
It's impossible to predict the severity of the narcosis, and its effect on the same diver can vary between each dive. It's also impossible to develop a tolerance, so at best, nitrogen narcosis can have a slight calming effect. The diver will feel good and in control, and it's actually this sensation why so many people are so fond of diving. On the other hand, narcosis can impair judgment, worsen fine motor skills, and divers may lose their ability to assess risk involved in a particular situation. It can be so bad that divers may not even be able to tie single knots in the location of your valve on their ear. It can also cause a loss of sense of direction and memory, so divers will have to look at their dive computer frequently because they'll forget what they just read a second ago. In an emergency, small factors can have huge consequences because the narcosis will cause a heightened emotional reaction. Something that causes no anxiety on the surface can cause extreme fear and anxiety at depth. In his panic state, Jari had been breathing heavily. He shouted at Patrick to give him the open-circuit bailout gas, and it was at this moment that Patrick realized how serious the situation was. So Patrick handed him the mouthpiece, and Jari took 10 breaths, and then he switched back to the rebreather. The process was repeated 2 or 3 more times, but during one of the switches, Patrick noticed Jari had nothing in his mouth and was helplessly inhaling water. Patrick quickly jammed the regulator over Jari's mouth, but it was too late. Jari had inhaled water and drowned. Patrick clutched at the rock walls and tried to pull himself together. As a rescue diver, he had seen dozens of bodies in the water, but these were people he didn't know and whose last moments he hadn't witnessed. Jari was his friend. He suddenly realized he was also breathing fast. He had to calm down. He checked his dive computer, which
Oh my god, I hate this. Can we please make it where we can lock these things?
To direct an ascent increases the risk of developing decompression sickness.
Decompression. The bends.
He had to remain in the 2-degree water for over 7 hours. He stared at the screen in disbelief. Moments before the accident, the reading was only 2 hours. How long had he stayed there for? 15 minutes? 20 minutes? Every minute spent at a depth of 110 meters adds over 10 minutes of duration to the dive. He couldn't even swim back to tell the others what had happened. The way was now blocked. So just moments after witnessing the death of his friend, Patrick was now in an even more dangerous situation. A dive that was only supposed to last 5 hours would now take 8 or 9. A single equipment failure would certainly cost him his life. Horrified by the situation he was in, he had no other choice but to begin swimming towards the dry cave, while also leaving the body of his friend for his other friends to stumble on when they went through on their dive. As he swam, he thought about the others and wondered what would happen when they discovered Jari. He was afraid they might not be able to make it around Jari's body, and then die as well. He also thought about how he'd then be driving Jari's van back to Canada alone, and then how he had to go to each of his 4 comrades' homes to tell their loved ones they were all dead. Kai, Vesa, and Jari Yu lowered themselves onto the ice and began their journey underground. Vesa and Jari Yu went first, with the most experienced diver in the group, Kai, in behind to ensure that their dives went smooth. They reached the air chamber about 20 minutes in, and then the sharp descent about 10 minutes after that.
It takes a team to bring a creative project to life, which is why...
Yes.
At a depth of about 125 meters, Vesa got stuck sliding through an opening less than a meter high. He had tried to go through in the wrong position, and eventually had to pull off 2 cylinders in order to get through. So once he got his cylinders back on, he was okay, but then his fins got tangled in the guideline. He yelled at the others to get his fin off, and Jari untangled it, but Vesa was already annoyed. 5 additional minutes translated into nearly an hour of additional time underwater, which he hated doing in the cold water, but they proceeded onward. After that, they passed the deepest part of the cave, and then after that, Vesa heard a beep, and he recognized that beep. That was the distress signal emitted by a breathing apparatus. Then he saw Jari H's body. Immediately, he tried to look away. Now, because of the shock of the situation and due to nitrogen narcosis encountered by divers at depth, the details of the next part aren't entirely clear. However, it's thought that once Jari caught up to Vesa, Vesa yelled to him that Jari H was dead and that he would have to try to find a way around. But that it didn't look so good because of how narrow the passageway was. Upon hearing this and seeing the body, Jari U apparently decided to turn back. Kai was a bit behind at this point and caught up to Jari U as he was now headed in the opposite direction, back towards the entrance, and so he knew something was up, but hadn't yet seen the body. On top of that, from his body language, Kai could tell something was seriously wrong. He tried to motion towards the guideline to get Jari moving in the right direction, but Jari didn't respond. He then asked what was wrong, and Jari responded, but he couldn't make out what he said. At this point, Jari's panic was worsening, and he started to thrash violently in the water. He was also searching closely between the bales, and Kai tried to calm him down and talk to him, but it wasn't working. He made sure he wasn't trapped in any way, and that the bale cap was on, but nothing was working. Kai was astonished. He literally had no idea what was going on. 1 second, everything was fine, and the next, Jari was freaking out, and as the situation continued, he realized that there was just nothing he could do. Moments later, Jari was dead. Kai realized he had to swim on. He quickly caught up to Vesa, who was now kicking furiously, trying to get through the blocked passage and finally saw the body of Jari H. Kai yelled to him that he needed to turn back, but Vesa was now also panicking.
Yes.
Because the wind.
What are you doing right now?
Chilling like a villain because I just don't care.
Are you playing Astroneer still?
Yeah. You know, let's make another one. Boom. Boom. Aluminum alloy graphene, which I hate to consume it, but I want to.
So actually it's a maybe for my new bed, or my old bed to come in. Okay, it's not really, okay, it's from South Carolina, we brought it here. It's a loft bed, and it's actually a maybe, we can add it.
Need glass.
But me and my mom can't do it by ourselves because we need my dad.
Heard him.
Maybe one day I'll experiment with elevators in this game. A vertical rail, but however, there's only one bad thing, is that if you dismounted, you would immediately fall down the shaft and kill yourself on accident. So I wonder if I might do, but it might be weird, but I might make like junctions. Almost kind of like how Willy Wonka's side elevator. I'll make junctions, that way you can just go off into a separate direction that you choose.
Kicking wildly and breathing heavily, trying to get around the body of Jari H. At this point, Kai is looking at Vesa and thinking he's going to exhaust himself, and that he's going to die too, at which point, the way will now be blocked by 2 people instead of 1. So, he made the tough decision to turn back without Vesa. As he swam back towards the pond, he was certain all 4 of his fellow divers had died. He was also worried about his own chances of surviving, because although he had 2 rebreathers, he had very little oxygen because one of his bailout cylinders was only suitable for the deeper parts of the cave. His first decompression stop would have to be made at a depth of about 100 meters. At that depth, he only needed to stop for about 1 minute, but as you ascend, the stops have to get longer and longer. Kai had performed several dives as deep as this one, but never in water that was this cold. He had also previously used something called an underwater habitat, which is an air-filled tent that allows you to rest.
My friend from South Carolina.
I thought about getting the $300 hydro flashlight or an aqua flashlight. The flashlight that is well designed to work underwater. 2,000 lumen flashlight, which 2,000 lumens. Oof.
I haven't seen my friend in like over 6 years now. Well, not over 6. Actually, no, it's been like 4 years.
He continued to ascend steadily.
Maybe
he
5
some of his decompression stops he should have taken, because at this point he was more worried about running out of oxygen than about getting decompression sick. On some of his earlier deep dives, he had skipped a stop here and there, but never as many as he was skipping now. After reaching the air chamber, he decided to breathe the trapped air to conserve his own oxygen. oxygen. He also contemplated staying in the air chamber for help to arrive because he'd have an unlimited air supply. However, he had no idea how long it would take for help to arrive.
Dude, how many soil tanks do I have? I have like, oh, I'm about to say, these are just the ones I got off of my trailer. Okay, smelt this glass, and then I can make 2 solar arrays, which are amazing. Then and when they're both on, they'll generate 28 power units, which is insane. Not like like really, not like insanely good, but like, you know what I mean. Yes, sir.
Dun, 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 dun. Hello? Grace. Grace, who was that? Grace, who was that? Hello? Race. Race. I don't play around with liars. Where are you? Race. Where are you? Come here. Come here. You better tell me who that was in your bedroom. Done! Astroneer be like, I see. Astroneer be like, I see. No, not right now.